Good morning. Welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. It is Friday, the 2nd of February as I am filming this. This will go out on Saturday, the 3rd of February. And this is my weekly wrap up. First of all, you will hear background noise. My kids are home from school. I thought about sending my son upstairs, but then I'd still have dishwasher noise and my husband would come down and make noise. So I'm just not fighting it anymore. I'm sorry. This is my life. I've got noise all the time in my life. Anyway, it has been kind of a big week. So it is the end of the semester for my kids, which for my son, he's in middle school. It's more just like things are wrapping up. But with my daughter, she's in high school now, and now she actually has some finals to deal with, which she did well on them. She has one class where the teacher is having some issues. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, but my daughter still has an A in that class. Also, the BookTube prize octafinals were announced, and I did get chosen for nonfiction. And so I am not supposed to talk, other than to just mention the books that I'm reading. I'm not supposed to talk at all about them while the octafinals are going on. Once they're over, I can talk about them. However, I don't always trust myself. I don't always trust myself about this. I don't want to slip. So I am just going to, on these wrap-up videos, just going to pretend like there's no BookTube prize, like I'm not doing anything with it. And then I'm actually going to be filming a vlog of my BookTube prize reading. And then once the octafinals are over, I'll publish that vlog. So if you follow me on Goodreads or Storygraph, I'm reading a lot more books than I talk about here. Only because they're the books that I mention when I start and when I finish, like my short story collections of Les Miserables and Huckleberry Finn. And then I have the BookTube prize. And I don't want to slip, so I'm just not going to mention them in these weekly update videos. But you'll hear all about my thoughts once the octafinals round is over. Let's see, what else? This weekend, my husband and daughter and I are helping out with a funeral for someone at our church. That's tomorrow. It's a thing. But other than that, my kids have today and Monday off. So it is kind of a long weekend. So it's kind of like, okay, whatever. We gave up our Sunday, and it's fine. We would have done it anyway. We're happy to do it. But we still have Friday and Monday off. Although Friday, I have to take my son to get his haircut today because, as my daughter pointed out, he's starting to look like Justin Bieber, and we can't have that. So there you go. What else should I talk about? I am behind in my comments. So if you've left me a comment and I haven't gotten to you, I'm trying hard to catch up. It's just, I've had some other stuff going on this week, just like busy stuff. So I haven't had the time to kind of sit at my computer and watch videos and answer comments like I'd like to have. So I am still working on that. But anyway, let's get to what I read this week and what I am currently reading. So I haven't finished anything since February began. So this is kind of my wrap up for, let me put my little line here so I don't forget, my wrap up for January, which I am going to do a January, I'm going to worry about this later. I am going to do a January wrap-up video. I'm going to film it after this, but that will be on Tuesday. So you'll get like the stats and all that. But in the past week, I finished 4 books. The first one was finished my first short story collection of the year, which was Partners in Crime by Agatha Christie. This is a Tommy and Tuppence collection. It is technically Tommy and Tuppence #2. So as I've said before, Tommy and Tuppence are interesting in that they're the only detectives that Agatha Christie wrote that age as she goes along. So the other ones, Perot, Marple, whatever, they start old and they stay old, even though time seems to move. It's very strange. But Tommy and Tuppence, in the first book, which is The Secret Adversary, you see them they're kind of acquaintances who meet up again after World War I, and they're in their really early 20s. Here, they're married. In their third book, which I am going to read this year, I think that one's N or M. It's one of the Agatha Christie books I'm reading this year. They're in World War II, so they're kind of like, have kids and things are going on. I do know it goes up. I think there's 5 Tommy and Tuppence books. So this one. So my feelings about Tommy and Tuppence is that they're very madcap. There's nothing wrong with that. They're definitely a departure from a lot of other Agatha Christie detectives, but I work better with them in short doses. And which is why I tend to do better. I don't know. I don't know if I did better with this than I did with Secret Adversary or not. I think I did get a little frustrated with them in Secret Adversary because they were just so snappy and the banter was all there, and it just was so, I was like, solve the mystery. Actually, and Secret Adversary is a thriller, not it's a mystery. It's not a mystery, but I'm like, solve it. Quit flirting with each other and solve it. So in this, you have several mysteries, however many stories there are here, although I don't think the first one's actually a story. Looks like there's 17, so there's 16 stories. And in each one, they like try to emulate a famous detective at the time, which is fine if you know who those detectives are. And I knew who Sherlock Holmes was, and I knew who Poirot was. They name-checked Poirot in this. But the rest of them completely over my head. I don't know who they were talking about. So I missed that element of it, which meant some of the banter didn't make the best sense, but yeah, whatever. It was fine. I'm glad I did this kind of rotating through with 2 other short story collections, because if I think I had just taken this and read one story at a time, it would have gotten really old really fast. But that's Tommy and Tuppence for you. Okay, the next book I finished was The Perfect Nanny by Leila Slimani. This was a really fast read. This one was really interested. So Leila Slimani is a Moroccan author, but she lives in Paris, writes in French, so she's Frenchish. But she writes, this is translated from the French. And this book is interesting because it is a thriller, but it's not an American style thriller. So the first line of this book is, this is not a spoiler, because this is the very first 4 words of this book. The baby is dead. So it starts with the murder of 2 children, which right there, that's not American, because like, Americans will shy away from killing children, usually, unless they're super dark in their thrillers. They tend to, or it's kind of really off, like it happened a long time ago and they're dealing with it, but it's not something, as a thriller, killing kids, that's tough, right? That's a hard sell for Americans. And in an American thriller, you'd kind of get like someone was dead, but you don't know who, you don't know what the deal is going on with them. And here, right up, you know who died, who was killed, and who did it. And then the rest of the book is what's building up to it. So it is a very different feeling than an American thriller, but I did appreciate that. I liked that difference. I thought that was really fascinating. This is almost more of a psychological study than it is a thriller, and I'm okay with that. It was really a page turner for me. The writing was great. The characters were interesting, but I had a big flaw in it for me. As a parent, I'm reading this, and through the book, I don't understand why the parents kept this nanny employed. They had reasons not to have her employed, to terminate her employment. They were not in any sort of situation where they couldn't have gotten another nanny. So I got very, very, very frustrated with the parents in this book. So that kind of brought it down with me. I don't think that's a cultural thing. I think that's a parent thing. But yeah, so this was okay. Let's see, I gave it a B. So it was fine. I would say if you want kind of see what a non-American thriller is like, this is a really good choice to start with, because it's easy to get and it's short and it does grab you really quickly. And it's a fast read. So, but yeah, so I would say like, and also if you're not a parent, you might have a different take on this than I did. I just, as a parent, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why is this woman still in your home? So anyway, that's my thought. And again, not a spoiler because they tell you on the first page what happened. And the next book I finished was The Gap of Time by Jeanette Winterson, which is the retelling of The Winter's Tale. I talked about that in the Bard Room, so I'm not going to talk about it here. I'll link the video down below. Or maybe I'll put it up. I don't know. It'll be somewhere. So you could just go and see what I thought of that. I liked it, okay? Yeah. And then the final book I read, and this, I first heard about this from Priscilla at Evening Reader, and then Becca at Read Becca has been reading it, and I was like, I have that book. I can pick it up. And that is The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. If you don't know, this story is about how Queen Elizabeth's corgis kind of like lead her to a bookmobile one day and she becomes a reader, and how this changes her life. It's really a meditation on what it's like to be a reader and how that affects your everyday life, how that affects who you are. And I loved it. You can see I have some tabs here of things that I'm going to be starting a quote journal, and I'm actually just waiting for this stuff to make the quote journal to come. So that's why there's tabs there. But I love this book. I do wonder what it would have been like to read this before she died. You know what I mean? There's not a lot They mention the Duke of Edinburgh sometimes. She does mention at one point the death of Princess Diana. She's 80 years old in this book, so they do tell you when it is. So it's all interesting, but I think it probably would have felt different. Not good, not better or worse, just different to have read this when she was still alive. Just saying, I don't know. I can't go back in time to find out. But A+ book. I really like this one. And I don't know anyone who has not liked this book. So those are the 4 books I finished this past week. And they're the 4 books that finished up January. So let's go now to what I am currently reading. And I'm going to tell you right now that I am not currently reading The Merry Wives of Windsor. And there's a reason for that. In doing The Winter's Tale, you can go see all the Bard Room videos if you want. But when I finished reading A Winter's Tale, I had a more positive view of it than I ended up having. I ended up lowering that from a B to a C. And part of that I realized is because I have ink all over my arms. Just notice that. My pen is right here. Look, we all read Shakespeare plays, but they're not meant to be read. That's not how they're meant to be consumed. They're meant to be performed, right? So when I watched a performance of this and I read a retelling of it, I got a different view. Not this, sorry. The Winter's Tale, it's over there. I'm holding up Merry Wives of Windsor. I got a totally different view than I had than when I read it. So what I'm planning to do, I'm going to try this for The Merry Wives of Windsor and we'll see how it works. And if it works really well, I may continue to do it. I'm going to do an immersive read of The Merry Wives of Windsor. So I am just waiting. I have the audiobook, an audio performance of this on hold from the library. Just waiting for it to come in through Libby, and then I will do an immersive read of it. I'm not actually going to be talking about this until it'll be my 3rd Bard Room of the month, because this coming one I'm going to do kind of a preview of Merry Wives of Windsor before I read it, so I haven't even started this. And then the 2nd week I'll do my draw for March, yeah. And then the 3rd week I'll talk about it. So I do have time to get it, but I'm not reading that yet. But what I am currently reading, let me get my big pile over here. So, not counting all the other stuff that I'm reading that I said I'm not going to talk about. Let me start with this one though, because this one I'm going to talk about today and then not talk about again until I finish. And that is The Mysterious Mr. Quinn. This kind of slotted in after Partners in Crime. So Harley Quinn, not the DC character. My kid's always like, oh, Agatha Christie made Harley Quinn. I'm like, not that Harley Quinn. And it's Harlequin, get it? Harlequin. He's really interesting because he's not like a detective. He's just sort of this guy who appears at times and kind of like prompts people to think of things a different way, and then they solve the crimes themselves. His sort of cohort-ish person who's always there is Mr. Satterthwaite, who actually has appeared in other, I think he's showed up in Perot. I know he showed up in Perot. He was in 3-Act Tragedy. At least he was in that one. So the Mysterious Mr. Quinn, he's really himself mysterious, and it's not like it's kind of like things happen and then he just shows up and he's like, think about this. And then the rest of them figure it out. So, if you can see this, when I do these, I've read some of them before that outside of this collection. And now that I have the collection, I'm not reading the ones I've already read, but I do have a lot of tabs in here. So I have not read a lot of Harley Quinn yet, but, I have enjoyed what I have read. I don't know if there's a Harley Quinn novel. He might appear in Cards on the Table, which is the novel I'm going to be reading this month. I'm not getting to it yet, but it might be. I'm not sure. We'll find out. But anyway, this is the Agatha Christie short story collection I have going. Okay, now let's see. Then for Historathon, I'm starting my 2nd book of Q1. Now, as I said, I kind of feel like there's 2 ways I personally can do this. I can either read a couple short books or 1 big book. And for Q1, I'm going the couple short books route. So I'm reading A History of Ancient Rome in 100 Lives by Philip Matyszak and Joanne Barry. Philip Matyszak also wrote 24 Hours in Ancient Athens, which I read last month. So basically, this is just going through 100 people of some sort of note. Now, it could be just that there's enough documentation. He talks about how he kind of chose that. And I've read the first 9 so far, and it does look like it's kind of chronologically, so one kind of leads to the other, at least so far. And it's really interesting. It's a nice little like nuggets, kind of like 24 Hours in Ancient Athens, but I actually think this format's going to work better for me because it's just little biographies. It's not like little stories. So when I get like the little story the stories that I got in 24 Hours in Ancient Athens, my short story mind kicked in and I wanted to like plot and character. That was not the point, but that's the way my mind worked. And this is like little biographies. So that's different. And I do think this one is going to actually, and I liked 24 Hours in Ancient Athens. I just think this one's going to be a lot more successful for me. And then for my library book group, I am reading Braiding Sweetgrass. So this is for March. I was supposed to do Ring Shout for February and we would have been meeting tomorrow, but I have to do the funeral, so I can't do that one. And I was feeling crunched for reasons that I'll get to in a moment. And so I said, I will just save Ring Shout for later. But I have been wanting to read this book and I had to put it aside once I found out my library book club was going to do it. So I'm happy to finally get to it. I'm taking it, as you can tell, very slowly. I do also have the audio of it. So I might do a little bit of immersive or maybe switch back and forth. I don't know. We'll see how it works out. But I actually am really loving the prose in it. So I think actually I'll probably do is like read it and then listen to it all over at a later date, because I'm getting a lot of it out of reading it. And I do think for a book club discussion, I need to read it to get that, to absorb it that way. If I were just doing it for the enjoyment, maybe audio would have been the way to go for a first read. But I have both, so there you go. And then I am doing a buddy read right now with Maria Andreev of Books and Bocadillos. I always have to think, because there's Maria Andreev of Books and Bocadillos and there's Elizabeth of Bokens and Books. So I have to like make sure I have the right channel. But we're doing a buddy read of Symphony of Secrets by Brendan Slocumb. I had said in a previous video, it was a 5 on Friday, where I said these are books that I planned to get to last year and just didn't. And this was one of them. And she said, I was planning to read this, so we're buddy reading. I just started yesterday. I did not get as far as I wanted to yesterday because things happened. But so far, so good. I can't say anything about this book because I am on page, what page am I on? 28. So I can't say anything. But it has a nice, pretty blue cover. And I do like Brendan Slocumb. I did really enjoy The Violin Conspiracy, although there were some things in it, like I thought that the villains in that book, so, you know, some members of his family, his like aunts, uncles, cousins, the members of like the white distant family, like they were a little too cartoonish for me. That was really my biggest problem with that book. And I can't say if that shows up again in this because I'm on page 28. So maybe next week I'll be able to tell you. I'm planning to read that over 10 to 14 days. So you will see that one again next week. Okay, now as for what I am listening to, right now I am listening to Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. This is why I thought I had a crunch. This is for the Book Cougars read along. They're focusing on romance this year. And this is their first quarter read. And I had it in my mind that it was this Sunday. And I was like, I have to get this done. I have to get this done. No, it's the first Sunday in March. So now I am not quite as rushed to read this. It's much more of a leisurely read for me at this point. And it's interesting. I believe this book is fairly old. I want to say it came out in the 90s. And a little history on me with romance is that, you know, I read romance a lot when I was younger, and in 2017, I read almost exclusively romance because I needed books that I knew would end up well, that I knew would have a happy ending. And I think at that point I got a little burnt out on romance, so I haven't really read it since then. Nothing against the genre, it's just that it's just not speaking to me right now, and that's fine. It has in the past and it probably will in the future. However, it's not right now. So I'm reading this, and there are things I like about it, but there are also things that are driving me crazy about this book. And I think part of it is because it does come from, I think it comes from the 90s. One thing about romance is it is a genre that really does change with the times. And the way we view interpersonal relationships and power dynamics change as time goes on. So this is a snapshot. It's a historical romance set in 1851. So we have that. But then we're also looking at through eyes of the 90s, which is different than eyes of the 2024s. And I'm getting really frustrated with some things in it that I think are because it was written in 1990. The power, I mean, there's one scene where I'm like completely creeped out by this book. And if I were not reading for a read along, I would put this book aside. Where the woman, she lives in a house. None of this is a spoiler. She lives in a house that has tunnels and stuff because she's a stop on the Underground Railroad. And because of the tunnels, she's had this guy and he leaves and he comes back and he like starts watching her as she sleeps. And I'm like, that is freaking creepy. I'm sorry. And he leaves a rose for her. I'm like, that's not romantic. That is creepy. But I think like in the 1990s, maybe that wouldn't have been seen the same way. I don't know. So it'll be really, I'm looking forward to the discussion, because I don't know if I'm the person who thinks about these things and I get all hung up on them, or if other people are going to pick it up too. We'll see. And then on audio, I am listening still to Mrs. Mohr Goes Missing by the person whose name I can't pronounce down below. It's a fun audiobook, mostly because of the narrator. You know, I'm enjoying it as it is. I don't think it's something I'm going to read on in the series, but hey, it's a book in translation and it's a book from Poland, so I can mark that off my list. So there you go. Yeah, so that is my week. And of course, as I said, I'm reading a lot of other stuff that I am not talking about right now. I will tell you this, I'm in Octofinal Group A. So if you want to know what I'm reading, you can go, there's a list on the BookTube Prize channel that has like, you can access a list of what are in each group. And the only reason I'm not telling you now is because I'm afraid I'm going to spill something. So you can go look up and see what I'm reading. Or if you follow me on Storygraph or Goodreads, you can see what I'm reading. I will say on both of those, I will not be putting ratings on the books until after the Octofinals are over. I'll go back in at that point and add ratings. But vlog is coming. It may be a really long vlog. We'll see. Anyway, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, information's down below. That's where we're doing the Bard Room books, the Shakespeare books. We're also discussing Les Miserables. So if you want to join us, come join us. We're also posting pictures of our fur babies. So, you know, whatever. Thank you very much. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.